NCRP Productions presents the Fireside Chat series. Well, good evening again. NCRP Productions presents what we've decided to call the Fireside Chat. I'm here again with Pedro. Hey, Pedro.
Hey, Barry.
So tonight we thought maybe we would give you some game mastering tips or possibly on the other side of it, the mistakes that we've made over time. Where do we want to start?
Gosh, mistakes. I mean, I have plenty of mistakes probably.
I've had plenty too. Usually the biggest one for me, at least as a starting point, is you sit down, you get the game set up, you get everything going, and you forget to figure out what you're going to have the players look at doing. So you say, okay, I'm running... oh God, it's especially important in licensed products. I say to myself, I'm going to run Stargate SG-1. That's an easy one. I'm going to run Babylon 5, which, by the way, if you've ever seen the role-playing game, it's actually Babylon 4 that you're playing on. But Babylon 5, and I never really think about what the characters are going to do. You can do that sandbox thing where you open it up and say, here's the world, go. But in most cases, I've noticed that players don't seem to follow any direction that you had in your mind, and since you didn't give them a direction, they're floundering.
Yeah, and especially if you have anybody new, like you really need to give them a direction. Like, but even experienced people are, like, oh, okay, what are we gonna do? Let's look over here, looking for some like little hint of what to do. I've tried to do the open world. A lot of times my open worlds don't end up panning out. Or, okay, I should say I've done it a couple times and it hasn't panned out.
I ran Gamma World for many, many years. After starting in 79 with D&D, I started running Gamma World in 80. And the group that I was playing with was... I'd like to think they were really, really into the game, but the group was willing to let me kind of do anything. So Gamma World, if you don't know, it is a TSR production. It came after Metamorphosis Alpha. The idea with Metamorphosis Alpha is it was a spaceship that got knocked off course, and it has been knocked off course for a couple thousand years, and things have changed inside. There's mutant humans, there's mutant animals, there's mutant plants. Couldn't play a mutant plant in Metamorphosis Alpha, I don't know why. And then a bunch of other things, and Jim Ward has done a redo with it with Goodman Games, so Metamorphosis Alpha is back in its original form, but Gamma World came afterwards, and again, Jim Ward, and this time it's on planet. And the year is 2471. We've just come out of 100 years of Dark War, and they never describe what the apocalypse was that we came out of, but we know that 100 years of darkness as we're coming out, everything has changed. And on that one, you can play a mutant plant, but you got mutant animals, mutant humans, pure strain humans. And that's really the sandbox one that has worked for me. We went into space, then we came back from space back to Earth. I had a huge, I stole from every single game out there, but I had a huge star-spanning game. And then in 92 I brought it back to Earth and started playing pretty hardcore there. And I just kind of said, hey guys, go. But what I had a really wonderful player. He's passed since, but Kyle Gerard was willing to kind of grab the players, drag them along, and make a move towards something. And in a sandbox, I feel like if you don't give them direction, you're going to be stuck having one player lead them, or else you're not going to have anything. How come the sandboxes didn't work for you?
So, let me see here. I guess maybe not working now that I'm kind of rethinking of it as you were talking. I don't think I've run many that actually went anywhere. I think every time... The problem with me is I think I start games with people that just don't finish them, or just like something always comes up, or they just fall apart. And, that's on me for, sticking with the same group. But, when we do... then it does work out pretty nicely while we're actually playing. Now, I'm thinking about it, I actually remember the one game that did work well, and it was a Dungeon World game. And so I just dumb premise, but I got my friends together, and I was like, okay, so you guys, you come together they bonded, without going into graphic detail because it was stupid ridiculous, they bonded over this teddy bear. And so my two friends, actually my three friends, one of them played a thief who just kind of like stumbled in on them. But two of them had spent like a night of debauchery together, and they had this like teddy bear that was involved for some reason to what I don't remember.
Oh dear God, do we need to mature audiences this thing?
That's why I'm not going into great detail.
Okay, so
but no, it was a night of debauchery on the town, and then I was
with
like,
a teddy bear.
Yeah, and then well, the teddy bear was a part of it, not the center of it, I should say.
Okay.
So then I was running the Dungeon World, and they have these really neat mechanics in Dungeon World on like deciding who the villain is, what they're for. And so then I rolled, it was an orc, and essentially they wake up to these orcs, kicking them in the face, stealing the teddy bear, and then they were like, and one of them was a paladin, so he's like, I swear an oath to find that man and get revenge for the teddy bear, find their teddy bear or whatever. So then they head into these woods in this temple in the woods. Okay, boom, they find it. Pretty fun. And I was going really ridiculous with this. There is a show, Workaholics. I made this dungeon as if in this fantasy world, these three guys from a show who were just like slackers or whatever. They were immortal, so they would just go off and party. They would throw parties there. I mean, all kinds of little funny things. But where it kind of picked up the real like open world part is they found this like sort of trap down at the bottom of the temple. So at the bottom of the temple, there's a book, and in the actual dungeon world, there's a book that has the quote answer to everything. But the problem is you have to roll, and it's got an incredible index, but you still have to look through it and all that. So
okay.
But I designed it to where this book was sitting on a pedestal, and there's all these little rings, and there's some light coming up from the rings. The farther you go into the rings, the more you age. For an immortal, no problem. You're immortal, so you can go pick up the book or whatnot. So these guys would go forward. Oh, shoot, now I'm an old man. Go back. I'm now a kid, and, I'm young again. And there was actually even somebody halfway in between a few of them, so his head was dead because it was too old.
Oh, jeez.
And so they end up pulling him out of it, and he's like a partier. Like, oh, what's up, guys? What happened? Where's the party? What's going on? So then they keep trying. So I swear they spent like an hour trying to get that book because like we want that, shooting arrows at them that would disintegrate, trying to get as close as possible without dying themselves. I think one of them actually did die and have to get pulled out. But eventually, and I forget what it was. I think they threw a rock at it because a rock would stay around for a while. But anyway, they eventually got it. But then what they didn't realize is that when that spell ended, whatever age they were at, that's where they were. So I had one guy who stayed at the very edge who was like actually younger than when he started.
Oh,
there
wow,
was the
okay.
paladin, which was actually really funny. He turned into an old man. So he's this old man in plate mail and all this stuff, but Dungeon World is a little weird in that it specifically states, as a paladin, armor, all that stuff, it doesn't encumber you at all. So there's this old, like, 80-year-old man in this plate mail, like, just going through life. And so they're like, well, crap. We got to find out how to reverse this. And this is where the open world comes in. So they're like, well, let's ask the book. And they're like, well, we need something. They're like, well, where's the Fountain of Youth? And so they make the roll and they find it. And they're like, okay, well, let's go find the Fountain of Youth. It was at the bottom of this giant trench that I had put in a world, like 500 feet down. And then they have to go to where, I had it to where the water kind of goes into the earth. And then I was like, well, where's somewhere ridiculous they couldn't possibly even get to, or where they wouldn't try? And I was like, yeah, at the bottom of this giant ravine, 500 feet down, and then in this black hole that goes into the water. And they look and they're like, okay, so how are we going to get in there? And I'm like, are you kidding? Stop. You're not going to get, what are you going to do? So one guy is like, I get it. I know what I have to do. Just a leap of faith. And for some reason, he thought that just laying backwards and falling into the water and just letting fate happen would help him. It did not. I was like, you're gone for a little while. You die, so we'll have your moment later. And the other guy was like, all right, cool. Well, I'm gonna climb down it. And I proceeded to be like, okay, make me like 20 rolls because it was a
500 feet.
Yeah. So this was the first. They climbed 500 feet down, and then he had to climb down another like 400 or 500 feet into this dark abyss to where they eventually did find the Fountain of Youth. But the one guy died who just dropped back, and the other guy, I think at that point had kind of like stopped playing because he quit. But then he gets down there. They have a moment of like, okay, Hey, I'm dying. My character is dying. You need to continue. Here, take these. And for some reason, they were like, yeah, we could use some of it for us, and then we can bottle it up and sell it to other people. And so, yeah, so that's what they did. He went and used some of it for himself, put it in a bunch of bottles, and then before it fell apart, they were going to go take to the queen.
Oh, my God.
But, it was ridiculous, off the rails, and that was the only successful one. And I haven't really tried to do an open world one. I'm actually working on one right now.
Okay.
That I'm hoping pans out. And
do you want to tell us what it is, or are you going to keep that secret for a little while?
I'll keep it secret for a little while. I'm fleshing it out. It's the first time I'm really super delving into a world I'm creating, so I'm hoping to make something of it eventually, but, that takes time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think in order for those to not fail, you have to have the right kind of people playing, right kind of players, and you just have to be up for real big improv.
Absolutely.
How did you handle all the weird stuff people threw at you?
To be honest with you, and side note, you may be hearing a clinking ice. I found shoju for the first time, and we've mixed it with cherry Pepsi, and we're drinking it as we talk. So just be aware of the noise. Yeah, it is excellent. So I've lucked out over my larger games. Anything that runs more than a couple of days has someone in it that's going to drive the players. And so the monkey business happens, but generally it gets overridden by that one person that's strong enough to drag them along. I'm going back. I'm going to say that Game Master tip number 1 from us, I'm going to change it. I think it's going to be, just have to think in these terms, no plan survives the party.
None.
Nothing you plan ever survives what they're going to do to it, how they're going to twist it up. I think I said this in the last Fireside Chat, but if I give the players straight ahead, left, and right, they will invariably grab a shovel and dig into the ground. So if you're not running an open world, then you're running some kind of a programmed adventure, and I don't do a lot of that. I've never done a lot of that when... Yeah, I'm old. When I started gaming, there really weren't a lot of programmed adventures. Tunnels and Trolls had their solo adventures, and they didn't really interest me. Not that there was anything wrong with them, but they didn't interest me. We had the monochrome-covered modules for D&D, and again, same thing. They were 16 pages, and they pretty much were what you would look at as a video game in the mid-'80s. Go into this room, kill the people living there, steal their stuff, and, keep moving forward with that.
That hasn't changed very much.
Really? New modules basically have that now, or the players haven't changed?
I think, actually, maybe it's not it's the players who haven't changed, I think, because they have that, a lot of that. They try, but honestly, a lot of the games devolve into, we should kill these people, pick their stuff, and we'll ask questions.
Right. So Game Master tip 2 is not an easy one to follow, but tip 2 for me would be pick good players, or pick one strong player, somebody that's going to drag you along, so that when the group starts really slowing down and bogging down with nothing to do, and it doesn't have to be a leader. There's a Star Wars game, and I strongly suspect that other people that were in this game with me would disagree, but I feel like, good or bad, and I'm mostly saying bad, my character was the driving force. I had a character in there. It was a squib, the little furry rabbit creatures that you've seen on Star Wars comic issue number 7 from Marvel. And the creatures have basically a pack rat type attitude. Anything they touch is theirs, and it becomes theirs, and they love on it and rub on it and all of that. But more than anything else, for me, I was running an inquisitive version of the squib. And we would go do things, and if it started getting slow, if the game master wasn't pulling us forward or the players weren't pulling forward, my character was gone. I would steal stuff. I would break things. I would start fights. And I'm a little teeny guy, maybe 3.5 feet tall. I can't tell you for sure how. My reputation was such, or the game master was pissed off at me enough, that we landed on a world and we got ushered in to a room, and each of us walked through, and I've got my air quote fingers up, a security field. Well, my security field was actually in a... Sorry, don't drop that. My security field was a repulsor ray that splatted me to the ground and held me there with 1,000 pounds of force, so I literally couldn't get up. I could barely breathe. And they left me there while the rest of the game was run by everyone else but me. When the group was done, they didn't seem to care to come get me. When the group was done, they released the repulsor field on me and told me get on the ship. So that was the game master saying, okay, maybe you're not the leader. As I said, I probably wasn't the leader, and he was trying to run a game that didn't need quite as much attention as I was giving it. But yeah, I think a second tip would be to have somebody. It doesn't even have to be somebody that understands the game. It just has to be somebody that's going to pull people along for better or for worse.
Yeah, I think it needs to be one. You really do need to do. If you don't do a session 0, which I recommend session 0s, although I will say for my group, I haven't done many for the like couple close friends because they're just always like, yeah, sure, let's just play. Like,
well, give me an example of a session 0 because I don't know that I've ever done that. What is a session 0?
So session 0 would be. It's kind of what we would combine like doing character generation. So the idea is you come together and the idea is you aren't necessarily going to play that night. You are going to all come together. It's a time for one character creation. So everybody can kind of come together and you can kind of bounce ideas off of each other. You know, right now in COVID time, they'd be done like over online. You know, hey, I want to play a rogue. I want to play a paladin. You know, if two people, that's when you figure out, oh, well, you both want to play rogues. Are we going to be able to work with that? You figure out what your party is so you can have some cohesion. So you're not, everyone's not making it in a vacuum. You come together with 4 fighters. The other thing is, and it's a good time to lay out, the expectation of the GM, like what kind of story they want to run. What kind of story they had in mind, what kind of characters would work for it. So, you know, if you're running, you know, a sea adventure, you know, a forest druid would not necessarily be the best thing. So it's kind of where you can kind of say what you want to do. It's a good time to kind of talk to your players and ask, like, hey, is there anything, the one that I did last, hey, is there anything that you guys absolutely do not want to see in this game? You know, I will usually lay out the big ones that I don't handle, the big topics that I don't ever put in, and then, ask, like, well, is there anything specific, anything particular you guys don't want to be in? I'll lay out what I don't want to put in, and then, is there anything specific, like the last one I did, somebody had a couple of very specific things that they were like, I'm not too comfortable with that. And I'm like, perfect. And I don't need to put that in. Luckily, they weren't things I was going to put in anyway.
Right.
But, it's a time to kind of just check in with your players. And then that way you can tell, like, are you both having the same expectations? So, like, do you guys want to play in this world? Does this world sound fun? Does the story sound fun? Or are you guys looking for something else? Because, like an example from my gaming past, I ran a Power Rangers game. I loved this setting. It was cool because I created this whole thing. Like, everybody at the table was super big Power Rangers fan. I went in and created not only a whole post-apocalyptic Power Rangers world, but designed this whole backstory of, like, a war with all the Power Rangers and all this stuff. I spent a lot of time on this. And then, if I had been smart at the time and done a session 0, I would have been able to gauge what kind of players. So, finding out, like, are you more story-driven? Do you like combat? Just what kind of players you are. Because there was a player who didn't want as much story as everybody else.
It's Power Rangers. You had to expect they were all looking for combat.
And so I thought that, but see, here's the thing. Everybody else besides this one person was eating up the story because they were all like storytellers too. So I felt like a decent amount of combat, and then I also tried to throw in story because I played games, and this was even earlier on. I played a game where, like, my first concept really was like dungeon room fight, and when you're younger you like that, but then as you get older and people, I had in that game specifically, they were like, well, maybe a little bit too much combat, and I'm like, okay, cool. But this one player, and I had never heard anybody say this, he said, I wish there was less story and more combat.
Oh, God.
I couldn't fathom it. But then at that time, I didn't realize that there were just different players. Some players really wanted that combat. And so at the time, it grated on me a little bit because, they weren't engaged. And I was like, well, like, how could you not want story? How could you not want this? And it was just me not realizing, like, some people actually just want combat after combat after combat. So if I had a session 0, I would have found that out and, maybe upped my combat, made things a little shorter, done all this. But it ended up kind of falling apart after that. Not necessarily because of that person, but, a couple of other factors. There's some people that couldn't come back.
So for a Power Rangers game, I'm sure other people are thinking the same thing as me. What system did you use?
So the system I found at the time, oh God, what was it called? I would need to look it up, but it was this system that I found, and to be honest, I don't know if it was ever published or somebody made it online, but it actually worked really good. It was a system specifically for the Power Rangers genre and magical girl genre, like Sailor Moon.
Okay.
So it was for that, all about teamwork, friendship, working together. There was a whole kind of mechanic with hero points, and you had to work together to defeat the villains, just like in the show. So you couldn't just punch them down to 0 HP. You had to whittle them down, and then in order to kill them, you had to use a certain number of hero points. So if you didn't have them by the end of the fight, you had to use your hindrances and everything and get them. Work as a team, make a combined attack, and finish them off, just like in the show. Any episode, at the end, they come together.
Zords.
Yeah. And then, they actually, what sucks is they didn't even make it to Zords. I had this whole thing where they started off, as regular humans in this world, and actually some of them playing aliens, and without delving too far into it. And then they got these ninja powers, which I don't know how familiar you are with
Power Rangers.
Yeah.
I've got a son.
So they went to the ninja stage, and then they were all getting their morphers. Because I was like, okay, well, what color do you want? What era? I let them pick all that, and I designed.
Oh dear God, what era?
Yeah, but see, it was cool because a couple of them were like, well, we want Lightspeed Rescue. So what I did I created this. God darn it, I have all these notes, and it's so neat to me, at least. So the city that Lightspeed Rescue was in, I created because at that one, they were dealing with demons, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, the Demon Queen had attacked there during the war and had taken over. So now the Demon Queen has taken over, but there's still humans there. They live in the metro. So I created this whole little metro system, this community that had all these problems that they were going to be able to fix. And if they fixed enough before the war came, this little micro war, they would have had a better chance against the demons. But then further, the Lightspeed base, I created this whole base, this whole horror module where they were going to go in there, realize that when I don't remember the names, but the Pink and the Silver Ranger's dad in the show was the leader of the Lightspeed Rescue. He, at the very end of the war, was like, we are losing. I need to pull back my people, including my kids who are fighting. He tricked them there, knocked them out, put them in cryo, essentially, and was like, this is the last bastion of our knowledge, of our modern world, because everything is falling apart. So he basically turned himself into an AI, kept all the recorded knowledge, but what he did not realize is that a demon made it past and then proceeded to screw everything up. Made possessed people, tensions high, so this whole place got run over and everybody died. He deactivated the shield on a nuclear reactor, killed everybody there. So they had this whole horror module, and it was great. They never even got to it.
This all happened before the players started the game.
I created.
This is all history.
Yeah, this is all stuff that I created, and then they were gonna go find it, and they made it to the town. They actually did a couple missions in town, and then it ended before they even got to go into the horror section. And I would love to play more in that world at some point. But
do you still have the notes?
I still have the notes. I actually still have them on my Google Drive.
So yeah. I guess a big question for our podcast listeners is, let us know. Do you guys want to see us do or see? Yeah, good job, Barry. Do you guys want to hear us play in Pedro's Power Rangers world?
I have the notes. If you guys are interested, I mean, I have no problem. Some of it was geared specifically towards certain people, but it can all be worked around. I mean,
so I'm going to warn you. In my head, I'm already thinking you're allowing the abilities from any show. So you're going to have, 3 of us are going to be Lightspeed Rescue, and then somebody wants a Lion Zord, and somebody's going to have a Dino Zord, and we're never going to be able to put the thing together. So when we have to combine to make the big thing, we're going to be like, who's a foot? Well, I was a foot. I'm also a foot.
It would be a must. And I will admit, I didn't even go that far yet. I was just like, we'll get them their morphers, and then we'll go from there. But it'll fit. They'll work. Someone will be the leg. You'll
Right.
have to deal, and I'll tell somebody to deal.
And am I remembering right? Some of them, the morphers did like two things, like it was bike and it was a Zord call. Is that right?
Yeah, there's so many different ones, and like some of the morphers, I feel like some of them were even weapons too. Like
The morphers themselves. were
yeah, I
weapons.
feel
Okay.
like God, there's so much to those shows, and I loved them growing up.
Okay, so a quiet thing. I will let you know, and no one else pass this around. I have the first 8 seasons of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on DVD. My son, when he was younger, got to playing with. Or got to watching Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, and I watched it with him, and I can't tell you why, but it really struck me. I really liked it.
Lost Galaxy was good. Too.
It was really
that was
good.
a good one.
And I found out, having looked at all the episodes, we didn't see all the episodes. And then there was another one that was after it. I can't tell you how far, and it was Wild something or other. The lead Power Ranger in that one, I think he might have been green, but he was the lion. And they had the Zords were like a lion and an ape, and I want to say like a rhino or something like that.
Yeah.
But those were the two. Almost had it. Those were the two that I liked. So that's why I ended up getting the DVD series. So someday, if we know this is coming, again, if you guys want us to play this, I'll go back and have a little bit of idea, so I can make the most ridiculous group of Zords. Hey, you pick this.
Oh man, yeah. I mean the world I created. I was I would toot my own horn on that one. I was pretty proud of the whole background. There was going to be a lot of I did a lot of research. I even stuff that I did not remember. I delved into all these different all the different shows or the seasons. That's it, all the different seasons. I learned a lot about Lightsaber Rescue. I had no idea about, because as a kid, I'm just like, oh, cool, cars and fighting.
Right.
Like, that was the main thing.
So you're talking about research, meaning watching TV. So,
Actually, more wiki. I didn't have the time
okay.
to watch as much because I wanted to delve into a lot of different random topics. So I just went to the Wikipedia, looked up, oh, who's this monster? Oh, who's the Queen of Demons? What's this about? Where can I fit them in? I think I even had something for because I feel like Lost Galaxy, there was like a space station they lived in.
They were. My memory is weak, but I remember they were in something like a moving asteroid, and
that was
like the city had been picked up and placed there. So
that was going to be in my world too. In the world that never even got off of the thing. Yeah, they were going to have to go through that as well.
Well, so if you're building a world, let's try doing tips, because I feel like we failed so far at giving people any tips that really were useful. How about tips on building a world?
Oh God, that's what I'm going through right now, trying to think of all these different things. I think, and a lot of the research, and by that I mean looking at other YouTubers and different podcasts for that. And I agree. I mean, start small. You don't have to do a lot. I'm an overthinker, so I'm like, well, how does this work? Well, there can't be a river here. Let me look up how rivers work. You don't need to know that. I mean, you can always, if you really want to do something accurate to the real world, if it's a real world, I mean, you can always do fantasy or sci-fi. It doesn't matter so much. And I think another thing for me is like, really over analyzing and over describing things, because I for my own GMing, I'm always concerned that I'm not giving enough information, or that I need to be more descriptive or narrative, when sometimes in order to describe a room, all you really need to say is, this is a noble's room. It has if you say, oh, this is a noble's room, everybody kind of has an idea, and then check out the things like, oh, what are they going to look for? Oh, there's a chest over here, an armoire over there, what are they going to want to loot?
Right.
But for like world building, I mean, create a small town, fill it with people. What I usually do when I'm creating a starter village is I will look like, and if you don't know it ahead of time, I'll look, well, what basic jobs were needed for a town to flourish, or a village to flourish.
So Game Master tip 1 for building your world is lots and lots of research. I feel like we've lost everyone already.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I do the same thing for the upcoming Unhallowed game. I'm researching when were things invented, what kind of tech was moving, who owned what. Things like Germany wasn't Germany at the time when the game starts. So there's not a Germany, there's Prussia and there's Austria, and they are different. So yeah, research is a good piece, but I get that.
The other side I will say to that is the way I started, which don't do any research, just do something. Because if you boil it down, actually, I think if I could give an overarching tip to anybody wanting to GM,
here you go. Here's tip one again.
This is the actual overarching tip. All the rules, take the entire book. Guess what? None of it matters. If you are running D&D and you just want to try something, you can build the characters, you can do all that. That's fine. But then if you don't know what AC bonus, somebody behind 3/4 cover gets, it doesn't matter. Things go from difficulty 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to 20. If you just pick a number that you think is right, players aren't going to know. They come across a goblin, the difference between 12 and 13 to hit, 5% difference. You know what?
Right.
Put a 12 in your head. If they roll a 12 or above, boom, they hit. And then just keep going. Your friends are just going to want to be there for a good story. If you have rules lawyer friends who have delved into the books and really want to play, rules as written, fine. That's fine. But if you're just starting... When I started, and I mentioned this in the last Fireside Chat, I was just reading a book. I was just I didn't read the entire rule set in front of my friends. I just kind of looked and was like, okay, this is what it is. Like, oh, this is a DC 15. All right, roll me, make me a check. Make me a listen check. Just have a little set of the skills. Somebody is like, okay, I want to pick this lock. Just pick something that sounds right. Sleight of hand is the closest thing in 5e. Be like, yeah, it's a tough lock, and they have a nice little chart. Easy is 5, medium is 10, or what is it like? Yeah, very easy is 5, easy is 10, normal is 15, or whatever. Just pick a number. I think that would be the best tip I can give somebody who wants to try it, because try it out, see if you like the style, because it's not for everybody. I think everybody should try it, because most people I see play it like it.
D&D or game mastering?
D&D, playing games, I guess
playing
I should
games.
say. But even running, try it. If you're the person that likes to tell stories, do it. If you're not, shove a book into your friend's hand and say, I really want to play this game, now run it for me.
For me, when you're looking at tips at the store at North Coast Role Playing, when I have people come in and talk, really for me, the things that I push to them are, one, you're the game master. Or better yet, being really careful here, listen to the whole thing before you freak out about the word I say. You're God, the game operations designer. The idea being that you're setting up the world. I heard somebody talking about antagonistic and non-antagonistic game masters and being equal. If you're not having fun, your players are not having fun. And if you're having fun and your players are not having fun, you're still doing something wrong. So the idea is make it a mix. If you're going through and nobody is succeeding at what they're doing, they're not going to like it. It doesn't matter if it's realistic or fantastic or whatever you're doing. If you're not all having fun. So let's back up and let's say this. The first tip is, this is supposed to be a game. You're supposed to be having fun. If everyone's having fun, go for it, go forward. The second thing for me is no fear. As a game master, you have to understand they're here to work with you and tell your story with you. So you have to have no fear. You don't have to worry about how they think about it, whether they like it, or whether you look in terms of the beginning, whether they're going to like it or not. They're going to tell you quickly they don't like it, and you're going to either change it or start something else. But be confident in what you figured out. We are playing a game right now, and in that game, the game master is second-guessing himself quite a bit. And I've talked to him a few times afterwards, and I've said, hey, look, just keep doing what you're doing, and be confident in what you're doing. Again, your thing. You don't know if it's a 12, a 13, or a 14. Put a number on it that works. Let them do it. If you have to fudge a roll, fudge a roll. It's not cheating. It's just making the game flow. Making the game flow better, making your play flow better.
And if you're doing it right, no player is going to know if you fudge the die roll.
That's very true.
There is only one player I've had who has specifically asked me, I don't want you to ever fudge a die roll on me. And he is the only... I think he is the only person I have never fudged a die roll on.
Okay.
Because he specifically asked me never to do it.
Sure.
Other games, if my players are listening, it was a good time. Yes, I may have fudged a die roll or two.
Sure.
But, sometimes, you don't... and, that's another thing. Sometimes you set DCs for things. Say, hey, roll the die, and you don't realize till after that die rolls, oh, shoot, if they fail this, it could seriously hamper the story. And you realize, maybe I should not have stuck a die roll on that. Not everything necessarily needs a die roll.
Now, that's a good tip. That's
a good tip. Not everything needs a die roll. And I think, and I usually base a lot of it off D&D because that's a lot of what people have had me role play, run for them. In there, I think in that or in some other things, if something is easy, if it's like a 5, don't make them roll for it. And really only make them roll for something if the success or failure of it would drastically change stuff. If somebody's going across a rope bridge and there's no... it doesn't matter if it breaks or not. Don't make them roll unless you want to scare them.
Right.
But,
well, if there's piranha or alligators in the water below, great. But if all they're going to do is get wet.
Yeah. But even if there's piranha, what I would say is if they're just going there, no one's hampering them, let them cross. Tell them about the piranha. Because then when they have to go back and are being chased, that's when you make a roll. If they're running across. But if they're being careful, hey... don't. It sometimes slows the story down. So
I can tell you from my side, there's and I know I'm making a mistake here. So whichever of you didn't say this, I apologize. But Ken Hite and Robin Laws have a fantastic podcast where they talk about all kinds of things. And one of the two of them, in one of the myriad of games that they have produced, had talked about the fact of the dice roll, that a dice roll should have a purpose, exactly what you said. It doesn't even have to be a big purpose. There has to be a benefit. If the die roll doesn't change the effect of the story, whether you make it or not, all right, so you weren't able to open the door, so you're going to go another way, don't make them make a die roll. Choose. It's locked. You're not going to be able to get in. You're going to have to break a window or something. Or choose that they're able to pick the lock. Whatever it is, the die roll should have an effect on the game. Everything doesn't need to be, and I think that's really something that happens for young game masters, young DMs, is you're going to be playing and you're going to think, oh God, I'm going to have them make a die roll for this. I'm going to have it for that. I can remember early on people making decisions by die roll. What do you think your character does? Hang on, let me roll a die. Why? You should know what your character's doing. You don't need to have it controlled by that. So, yeah, make a die roll when it has an effect within the game and nothing else.
Yeah, nothing... I can't say nothing worse, but one of the terrible things that can happen in your story is just getting bogged down with minutia. It really is better sometimes to just, especially, let's say, something you're not sure on a rule. Yeah, I could spend 10 minutes looking up in the rule book, hey, where is this rule? What's a specific thing for fall damage? It doesn't matter. You're the game master. Yeah, you can always look it up later, make a judgment at the time, move on, say, hey, we'll come back to this later.
I think that's good.
That's a darn good tip right there. And another thing, and this just came to my mind from another game master channel. Was it Matt Colville? Great channel if you're going to be a game master. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
But he had mentioned that when it comes to dice roll, oh shoot, oh no, I lost my train of thought. I am human.
I see you finished your drink, and I'm fairly close, so we can wind it here. Let's see. So the tips we came up with were you're the game master. Do what you want. Fake it till you make it. If you've got to look it up later, do it, but don't slow the game down if there's no need to. Call out a number that works for you, works for everyone else. Don't do a sandbox unless you're ready. What else we say? No plan survives the party.
That's true.
I think that's it. I think was what we covered.
I think those are good topics. And,
All right. Well, so there's our tips for game mastering. I hope they help.
Yeah, hopefully they helped, and maybe I'll eventually remember what I was even
There we
thinking.
go. That'll be another one. All right, Pedro, it was nice talking to you
It was
tonight.
good talking to you too.
Have a good one.
Everyone have a good one.
Thank you for listening to another NCRP Productions podcast. We value your support and would love to have you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all at NCRP Productions. You can also find our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever great podcasts are found. We value your thoughts, so please don't hesitate to leave feedback and comments. And if you want to reach any of us directly, we are available at ncrpproductions@gmail.com.